My name is Tony. I'm 28 years old, and I just graduated as a commercial pilot. It still sounds strange to say that out loud. After years of studying, training flights, and sleepless nights racking up hours in the air, I finally made it into a major airline yon of those names you dream of seeing emblazoned on your uniform from your first day in the simulator. I confess, it has been challenging. Everything is still new procedures, the faces, the weight of responsibility. But what strikes me most, every day, is the feeling of being in the right place. Even with the pressure, with the experienced eyes around me, with the fatigue of long layovers and nights in hotels that all seem the same, I know I belong here. It was my third day at the company, and my first long layover outside the country. I was still trying to get used to the codes, the name tags, the wheeled suitcases parading through the lobbies, the automatic smiles, and the formal good mornings. Everything seemed fast, timed, almost choreographed. We were in the lobby of the hotel in Bogota, waiting for our rooms to be ready. Most of the crew had already spread out on the sofas, or were fiddling with their cell phones. I was a little lost, just walking until he walked in. The captain. His fame had reached me even before I saw his badge. They say he's tough, to the point, doesn't talk much to new co-pilots, and hates delays. But none of that prepared me for what I saw. Tall, broad shoulders, perfectly tailored dark suit, white shirt, neatly tied tie. His well-groomed beard accentuated his serious features, and the gray hair at the sides gave his focused gaze even more authority. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He had an imposing posture, the kind that makes you adjust your shirt without realizing it. But what caught my attention most was the way he carried himself, firm, masculine, as if each step had weight and purpose. When our eyes met for the first time, I felt my stomach tighten. He looked at me for 2 whole seconds. No more, no less. He just nodded and kept walking, pulling his suitcase as if he were crossing the world without haste. As soon as we arrived at the hotel, the captain went straight to the reception desk. He said something to the manager in a firm, low tone, like someone who was used to getting things done without beating around the bush. Meanwhile, an employee appeared in the lobby with a tablet in his hand, looking around until he found me. "Tony?" he asked. "Yes, that's me." He typed something on the screen, picked up a key, and handed it to me. "You'll have to share a room, sir. The hotel is fully booked today. Unfortunately, we don't have enough rooms." I was silent for a second. That took me by surprise, but I didn't want to seem uncomfortable. "That's fine," I replied, trying to sound natural. I picked up my suitcase and headed for the elevator. The door was already closing when I heard quick footsteps and a deep voice. "Hold the elevator, please." I pressed the button, and the door opened again. It was him, the captain. He entered elegantly, his wheeled suitcase beside him, his suit perfectly pressed, his presence intense. He looked me straight in the eye. "How are you?" "I'm Edward." I swallowed hard before answering. "I'm fine, Edward. I'm Tony. Nice to meet you." He continued staring at me, with that steady gaze that seemed to examine more than just my face. "Tony, the new co-pilot?" "That's right, that's me." "Nice to meet you," I said in a restrained manner. And then, silence. The elevator rose slowly. I could hear the sound of my own breathing. He kept his eyes straight ahead, motionless, as if he were in no hurry. When we reached the floor, we stepped out together, and then came the unexpected. "Which room are you in?" he asked, just as calmly. 112, I replied, still not understanding where this was going. He stopped next to the door and said, without any surprise in his voice, "Yeah, looks like we're sharing a room." My stomach turned. I had no idea I would be sharing with him. Our flight was scheduled for the next day at 10 in the morning. But now, I would have to spend the night in the same room as the tough, serious, and absurdly handsome captain. I pretended to be natural. "Yeah, looks like it." He smiled slightly, almost imperceptibly. "By the way, I'm the pilot. We'll be working together." "I've heard about you," I said, still trying to keep my composure. He looked at me sideways, with a serious and direct expression. "Oh, really? I hope so." Without waiting for a response, he swiped his card in the lock. The green light came on. He opened the door and went in. And I, still trying to understand what I was feeling, followed right behind him. As soon as we entered, he went straight to the bed by the window, as if he already knew it was his. He dropped his suitcase precisely beside it, calmly took off his blazer, and hung it on the chair in the corner. Everything about him was calculated, firm, as if even his pauses were disciplined. He turned toward me. "So, Tony," he said, his voice low and firm, "since we're sharing a room, no bringing women here, okay?" I raised my eyebrows, a little surprised by the remark, but I kept my composure. "Don't worry, Mr. Edward. That won't happen." He stared at me for a second, with that serious look that always seemed to measure intentions. "And no, sir." I let out a small smile, trying to hide the slight tension I still felt. "Agreed." I turned to open my suitcase, but before bending down, I glanced over my shoulder. And there he was. Smiling too. Out of the corner of my eye, discreet. Just like me. For a second, we didn't look like captain and co-pilot. Just two men sharing a space too narrow for such formality. I was distracted, rummaging through my suitcase, trying to look busy. When I looked again, I saw his suit being carefully thrown onto the bed, a simple gesture, but one that seemed to slow down time. I tried not to stare. I swear I tried. But it was stronger than me. He calmly took off his shirt, revealing a firm, defined body, the kind molded by years of discipline. His chest and arm muscles were evident even in the soft light of the room. The dark hair scattered across his chest formed a path to his slightly defined absand. Everything about him exuded a raw, silent masculinity that made me uneasy. His face remained serious, as if he didn't even know the effect he was having. But I knew he noticed. Yes, he noticed my gaze. And for a second, our eyes met. I hid it right away. I turned my back, as if I were looking for something in my backpack. The silence grew heavier. He didn't say anything. He just picked up the towel with a precise movement and went into the bathroom. Soon after, the sound of the shower began to echo through the room, a constant, enveloping noise that seemed to fill the entire space. I took advantage of the moment to change clothes. I put on a t-shirt and light pants. I turned on the TV, but I can't even say what was on. I lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to think of anything other than what was happening behind that steam-covered door. But it was impossible not to imagine. He came out of the shower wearing only light sports shorts. His hair was still damp, his chest slightly wet, with a few drops slowly trickling down the dark hair covering his defined abdomen. He draped the towel over his shoulders, and when I looked to the side, I saw that he was standing next to my bed. "Tony, what are you going to do now?" It took me a few seconds to answer. I was still trying to ignore the strange heat forming in my stomach. I wasn't thinking about anything. "Why? Want to go for a run?" he asked casually. "Run?" I repeated, surprised. He confirmed with a slight smile. "Yes, there's a nice park nearby, with a lake and a running track around it. The late afternoon there is beautiful. It's peaceful. Want to go?" I didn't think twice. I've always liked sports, and the idea of getting out, clearing my head a little, and, honestly, spending more time with him excited me. "Of course I want to. Let's go." "Great," he said. "I'll go put on my sneakers." I got out of bed right away, went to my suitcase, and took off my pants. I stood there in my underwear for a moment while I grabbed a pair of comfortable shorts. In the reflection of the turned-off TV, I noticed he was looking at me. When I turned my head, he pretended not to be, fiddling with his phone. But I had already noticed, and I think he knew it too. I put on my shorts, my sneakers, a light t-shirt, and when I was done, I said, "I'm ready." "Me too," he replied, grabbing the keys and fixing his hair with his hand. We took the elevator down together. The silence inside was no longer uncomfortable. It was a different kind of silence. More charged. We left the key at the front desk and went out. The late afternoon sky was beginning to change color, tinging everything with a soft golden hue. A cool breeze blew between the buildings. It was as if the city was breathing slowly. I didn't know exactly what to expect from that moment. I only knew that, of all the flights I had imagined taking, none had started like this. Soon we arrived at the square. And, to be honest, it was even more beautiful than he had said. The sun was beginning to hide behind the trees, tinging the sky with shades of orange and gold. The light crossed the lake in the center of the park and reflected on the water with a calm, almost hypnotic glow. The air was fresh, the sound of birds still present, and a few people were walking or stretching around the track. We started running lightly, side by side, at a leisurely pace. Our footsteps hit the ground in sync, and our breathing mingled with the sound of leaves swaying in the wind. Every now and then, he turned his face toward me. "Everything okay?" I smiled between breaths. "Yeah, everything's fine." He just nodded and looked back ahead. We continued like this for a while, without rushing, sometimes running in silence, other times exchanging brief glances. It wasn't the kind of conversation that was spoken aloud. It was another kind of communication, a shared presence that was already beginning to say a lot, even without words. The sun was slowly setting, and little by little, the city seemed to slow down with us. After a few minutes of running, we decided to stop. We sat side by side on a wooden bench facing the lake. Still panting, we remained silent for a few seconds, catching our breath as the sun touched the tree line, leaving everything with an almost cinematic golden hue. I looked at him. His t-shirt clung to his chest, showing the outline of his muscles, and the light sweat gave his skin a subtle sheen. His hair was already starting to dry, and his chest rose and fell with his heavy breathing. Even sweaty and panting, he looked flawless. "You're in great shape. Congratulations." He smiled slightly, still looking ahead. "Thanks. You look good too." I took advantage of the rare moment of relaxation to tease him a little, testing the limits. "Look at that," he's smiling. He turned his face slowly, as if he couldn't believe I had said that. "Oh, very funny," he replied, laughing for the first time with a little more lightness. We stared at each other for a second, a smile on each side. The air between us seemed lighter, easier. For the first time, he wasn't just the tough captain. He was just a guy, breathing next to me, with the same rapid heartbeat. "Shall we go?" he asked, already getting up. "Let's go." We started running again. But now, something had changed. We returned to the hotel in the early evening. The sun had completely set, and the street lights came on, casting yellow shadows on the sidewalks. The city was enveloped in the silence of the late afternoon, and everything seemed to slow down as if time was giving us a chance. We went up. I grabbed my towel and headed straight for the shower. I went into the bathroom and left the door ajar. Maybe by accident, maybe on purpose. I threw my clothes on the floor, turned on the shower, and stepped in, letting the hot water fall over my body. I closed my eyes, feeling the tension drain away with the water. And it was there, at that moment, that I heard the door slowly opening behind me. He came in, calmly. "Can I come in? It's really hot," he said, his voice deep and firm, but too low to be casual. I smiled, still not turning around. "Sure." I felt him come closer. The water was now falling on both of us, hot, intense. Steam filled the shower, and the sound of the water drowned out everything except our breathing. I had no more doubts. I moved closer, slowly. His body was inches from mine. I looked into his eyes for a second that seemed to last an eternity. Then I kissed him. At first, he put his hand on my chest as if to push me away. But he didn't. He just stared back at me. And then, without further hesitation, he pulled me in and kissed me passionately. It was a wet, intense kiss, full of pent-up desire and swallowed silence. A kiss that said what no words had been able to say until then. There, under that shower, with our bodies pressed together and the water running between us, I gave myself up. For the first time in my life, I made love to another man. And, to be honest, I got off to a good start. He was beautiful. Beautiful in a way that looked like he had stepped out of a magazine. But what struck me most was not his body, it was his manner. The firmness of his touch, the warmth of his gaze, the way he guided me without saying a word. It was, without a doubt, the best experience of my life. When we got out of the shower, We got dressed in silence, without rushing. He put on a light-colored shirt and looked at me naturally, as if it had all been inevitable. "Shall we have dinner?" he asked. "The hotel restaurant has very good food." "Sure," I replied, my heart still racing. We went downstairs together. But something in me had already changed completely. We had a quiet dinner. The conversation was light, almost casual, but inside I felt completely different. It was as if the world outside remained the same, but something inside me had been turned upside down in a good way. We returned to the hotel in comfortable silence. We changed clothes. He put on a light t-shirt and sweatpants. I did the same. The night was cool, and the room seemed cozier than before, perhaps because there wasn't so much space between us now. He was the first to lie down. He settled into his bed, pulled the blanket up to his waist, and turned his face toward me. I was already on my way to my bed when he looked at me, without saying a word, lifted the blanket to his waist, and made a simple, direct, and impossible-to-refuse invitation. "Come." That was all. I smiled slightly. A small smile, but full of meaning. I turned off the light and went over. I lay down next to him without saying another word. He pulled me close, his arm over me, firm, as if hugging me, and holding me at the same time, as if he didn't want the night to end. We stayed like that, his body warm against mine, his breath heavy on my neck. Every now and then, he kissed my neck, my shoulder, my neck again. Each kiss was a silent caress. It wasn't about sex, it was about being, about feeling. At that moment, there between the sheets, with his body nestled against my back and the world outside quiet. It was the best place in the world. When I opened my eyes, the light of dawn was already coming through the cracks in the curtains, soft and golden. Still sleepy, I turned my face and saw that he was there, lying next to me, already awake. He watched me silently, with that calm and intense look that I was beginning to recognize. He leaned closer and gave me a light kiss, full of intimacy. "Did you sleep well, sleepyhead?" I smiled, my voice still a little hoarse. "Yes, I did. It's impossible not to sleep well in your arms." He laughed softly, in that restrained way that made me want to tease him just to hear it again. Here comes the funny guy. But this time, the tone was different. There was a mixture of affection and desire in his eyes. Our faces were close together, and there was no room for doubt. Our lips met again, slower, warmer, a kiss that deepened, and in a few seconds we were touching each other, our bodies fitting together with an intimacy that seemed old, even though it was so new. We gave ourselves to each other right there, in the silence of the morning, with the sheets still rumpled from the night before. It was slower, more intimate, as if each touch confirmed everything we still couldn't say out loud. Then, without rushing, we went to the shower together. The hot water, our bodies pressed together under the steam, wet kisses, hands sliding. Everything flowed as if that moment had already been written. In that room, that morning, time seemed to have stopped, and I didn't want it to start again. Anyway, that's my story. Or rather, the beginning of it. Today will be my first trip with Edward officially side by side, in the cabin and, who knows, maybe in life too. I don't know how it will be. I have no idea what awaits us. But honestly, I hope everything goes well. If you like this story and want to know what will happen to us in the next chapters, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. The uncut version, with all the details, will be posted soon. Thanks for listening. Kisses, and see you soon.